Hello and welcome to another edition of Kayak Fishing Weekly. I'm your host, Justin Largen, and we are the show on the Serious Angler Network that is dedicated to all things kayak fishing. So thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be talking smallmouth and specifically early season smallmouth. I have got some experience, especially over the last couple years, when it warms up a little bit. Say when it's the water temps are warm enough that you can get out there and wade for where I am in the country, pretty much from May all the way on up into, say, October, uh, basically when I don't mind getting wet. Um, that's typically when I'm targeting the smallmouths. I don't have a ton of experience in the pre-spawn, but I plan to change that. I actually am supposed to be getting my new kayak in tomorrow. I ordered a bona fide RVR. Kind of went back and forth for a long time debating between that and the Crescent Shoaley. They seem like very similar kayaks. There's pros, I think, to both of them. I ultimately decided to go with the RVR. Uh, I've already got a motor bracket for it, and basically, my thinking is turn that into my river kayak. I've got a really lightweight one that is great for throw and go. I think it's 47 pounds, maybe my Crescent Ultralight. Really like that for getting into some really skinny water throughout the summer. Taking it to little backwater ponds, short trips, places that you can't get anything else in easily. But I wanted something in between that ultralight and my Hobie Outback, kind of my big water boat. I wanted something that was going to handle some of the faster water a little better, something I could paddle a little easier, that I can really zip around in with the motor. So I'm pumped. I cannot wait for I guess to get my actual hands on the bona fide, start rigging it out, getting it ready. Um, and then we're still pretty cold here. I mean, it's March. April's right around the corner. But I'm hoping I can get a trip in this month, and at the latest, I'll get a chance to chase the smallmouth a little bit earlier than I have in the past. So I am very selfishly anxious to pick our guest's brain. We got Ryan Dahl, fantastic smallmouth angler. I'm anxious to pick his brain and sort of learn what I should do differently, maybe what's the same. Um, Pick his brain, figure out how I can catch some of these early season smallmouths. Because really, this is the time of the year when they're going to weigh the most. I mean, just like largemouth fishing, you got these big, heavy pre-spawn fish, and frankly, when I catch them, a lot of times, even a 20 incher in the summertime, I'm looking at 4 pounds, kind of on the top end. I've yet to catch a 5 pound smallie. I feel like my best chance is going to be this time of year. So I'm going to hopefully learn a little bit and get some ideas for how to make that a reality. But before we get to our guest, we also had the biggest kayak tournament that there is. And with Bassmaster being kind of the king right now, there's with Hobie gone, and KBF in a little bit different format currently. To me, I don't know that there's any debate. This is the biggest championship event that there is, and they had it on one of my favorite lakes, Bassmaster Kayak Series Championship on Lake Fork. It was fun to watch. I tuned in. I don't even remember what time it was. It was probably 9, maybe 10 o'clock. I checked in, uh, just from work. I checked in periodically throughout the day to see, what guys were catching. And Lance Burris already had like 95 inches. And then throughout the days, like every time I would check back in, every hour, half hour, whatever it was, I would see more guys with big limits. It was kind of cool what they did with the tournament because it was weather shortened. They had to cancel day one due to high wind, but they extended the fishing hours on day two, which I thought was really cool. Turned it into an 11-hour fishing day, and the guys absolutely smashed them. It was stupid, as many of you have probably already seen. Um, and I can't remember the exact number. I'm going to pull up the stats here. I mean, it was a stupid slugfest. Wyatt Hammond got the win with an amazing 111 and a quarter inches. Just a stupid single day bag. That's more than I catch in a monthly tournament most of the time. Uh, that that is awesome, and it's an awesome fishery. But 16 anglers put up 100 inches in that tournament, so I thought it would be nice to shout out all 16. So we'll start with Merlin Hammer the Third in 16th. I mean, that's insane to me. 100 inches. I've yet to break 100. I had 99 and three quarters once in Florida, but I've never caught 100 inches. And to think that I could have gone down there, caught 100 inches, and been in 16th is crazy to me. So Merlin, then Christine Fisher, Alex Miller, Matthew Scotch, Mark Kyle, Dave Crockett, Drew Gregory, Lance Burris, Russ Snyders, Garrett Wade, Ron Butler Jr., and then our top five, Gene Jensen, 105 and three quarter inches, Ewing Minor, 106 and a quarter inches. Also, Ewing with the big bass for the event, 24 and a quarter inches. Then Bennett Nall, 106 and three quarter inches, uh, tied with Bennett, but winning the tiebreaker with his big fish, Joshua Deal taking home the runner-up spot, 106 and three quarter inches. And then again, Wyatt Hammond, 111 and a quarter inches. Um, it was man, it was tough to not be there and watch all those fish getting caught, but it was fun. And there, I've already seen some really cool videos. Christine had a video of her catching a fish, a giant. I think it was 22 something. Drew had a video of him with a sight fish. I'm sure there's more out there that I haven't seen yet, but just those short little clips on Instagram were pretty cool to watch. So yeah, that tournament looked like it was a blast. And let's scroll down here and see how far 90 inches went. 39th place. Everybody 39th and up had 90 inches. And I mean, even further down, 85 inches was all the way down to 57th. I mean, just an absolute slugfest. And there was some tough weather too with that wind. But yeah, I it got me amped up to get out and do some fishing here at home. So congrats to everybody that qualified for that event, for everybody that went down there and chased those big Texas fish. Uh, we did have one other tournament series I wanted to not forget about. Kayak Adventure Series, they had their event a few days after the classic, Kayak Classic, as some call it. They called their event Paris Reel Fest. There were a bunch of lakes in play. I don't remember the names of all of them, but they stayed kind of right in that Fort Worth, Dallas area. And the new lake, Bodark, that everybody's talking about was in play. So I don't know where everybody fished. Don't have any inside information on that. So I don't know if Bodark was kind of where everybody went, or if guys checked out some other sneaky places trying to get away from a crowd. But I want to shout out the top finishers in that event. Uh, third place went to Russ Snyder's, 97 and a quarter inches. Then Jordan Westerman, friend of the show, check out his I guess interview. Is that even the right word? Should we call it an interview? I don't know. My chance to talk with Jordan about pre-spawn fishing. If you missed that episode, go back and check it out. That was a fun one. Jordan was runner up with 101 and a quarter inches. And then the winner, Adam Coleman, 102 and three quarter inches. So congrats to those guys. Texas, if you're anywhere close, it seems like that's where you want to be right now. There's some big bass getting caught. And I think that'll cover the news and notes. I'm trying to think of the next Bassmaster event is not till late April on Dale Hollow. And then I believe the next Kayak Adventure Series event is going to be the first week of May, um, up here in Virginia. I am excited that I will finally get to do a Kayak Adventure Series tournament. Really looking forward to that one. It's a that is about my favorite time to fish the lake that I'm going to be fishing. So, um, enough of all that. Let's get to the fun stuff and get to our guest here. All right, so let's get to it. Our guest, Mr. Ryan Dahl.
How you
Ryan, thanks for
doing?
joining. Dude, I appreciate you making some time. Uh, you are a smallmouth hammer. Anybody can take a look at your Instagram feed and see a lot of big smallmouth.
I appreciate that. Thanks for having me, man. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, this will be fun. And I was kind of setting it up. Um, I've done some smallmouth fishing in the spring, like March, but it was mostly back in college. I went to school and college campus backed right up to the Shenandoah River, which is it's not quite the New or the James, but it's still a pretty good river. And I'd get out there because I could stand up on some rocks without getting wet and kind of sling into some of these little pools. And it was right below a dam, which I feel like was cheating. Like just all the smallmouth would stack up in there that time of year. But so basically, I have experience fishing below a dam, um, and then after that, I pretty much just fish May. So cold water is something that I don't know. Maybe I'm just too much of a wuss, but you are not. I see you like bundled up out there in the snow. So I'm excited to talk that. But before we jump into the cold water stuff, I kind of want to hear how you got in. Got your start, got into the sport, into the kayak world. Um, yeah, your origin story.
Yeah, well, like a lot of people, I think my dad and my grandpa introduced me to fishing at a young age. Just taking me out catching bluegill at the pond with grandpa or my dad. We always had like a cheap, crappy boat. My parents did, and my dad would take us out to the local lake, and he loved catching crappie. So I can remember when I was little, we'd go out and my dad, my uncle, and my dad would get some minnows, and we would go out and crappie fish with a bobber and minnows. Which, I mean, it was fun. It got me excited, but eventually I ended up like venturing out on my own, wanting to try to catch fish around the neighborhood, and we had a couple ponds and a creek. So I have a memory. Guess I kind of got in a lot of trouble when I was a teenager, young kid, and I
A lot of
remember
us
my
did.
parents. Yeah, so my parents grounded me, and I had this tackle box, and it was full of lures that I would get from Kmart, all these little Rapalas and stuff. And I remember my buddy came over, and they're like, "You're not allowed to leave." I'm like, "I just want to go outside and show them my new tackle." So I remember taking my tackle box, and my dad's like, "You better not leave." I remember sneaking out and jumping the fence to go fish with my buddy for the rest of the day. So guess I always loved fishing when I was little.
Dude, that's awesome. So you got started early. I think kind of like a lot of us did. Like dad dad was more of a trout guy for me, but he took us to just a little pond growing up, me and some of my siblings and catching bluegill was that was the first fish I remember catching.
Yeah.
But and then at some point I kind of got the bug for bass and yeah, then I've been kind of an addict, needing a fix all the time ever since. But what got you into the kayaking part specifically?
Um, so we had that little creek, and we used to catch little smallmouth and sometimes little bitty largemouth in it. But I don't think I got real heavy into like the smallmouth river fishing until I'd say about 10, 11 years ago.
Okay.
So I, I would see people on Facebook or whatever in some groups catching smallmouth, and I just got obsessed with it, and I wanted to figure out where I can go catch them and how to do it. So I spent a lot of time researching stuff online, and that's when I came across a lot of like all the old school, excuse me, Jeff Little stuff, and I watched a lot of his videos back in the day, and that's kind of how I got some info to get started on myself.
Gotcha. That's funny you mentioned him. He was one of the ones like him and Chad Hoover's the other one I remember. But like to me, I always thought of and I know it's not fair. They're both good at multiple species, but I always thought of Chad as like the largemouth guy and Jeff as the smallmouth guy. So it's like when I
Yeah,
wanted to know something smallmouth, but
yeah,
the little stuff. And it's still I'm amazed that his
yeah. I
channel is
started
not
out.
bigger than it is. Sorry,
Yeah, that dude's
sorry.
got a lot of knowledge. Oh, you're. I was gonna say I started out, like doing a lot of the bank and the wade fishing and stuff, and then I
Okay.
realized that if I really want to catch more fish and get away from the bank and get away from the people, that I needed a kayak. So I had a paddle kayak for, I'd say, 3, 4 years until I found out you could put a motor on the back. That ruined me.
Same here. I had I was almost the same. I think it was roughly 10 years for me in a wilderness ride. And then I I think it was almost out of necessity. I was fishing down at Lake Fork and I tore up the keel, like the little keel guard on it. I knew I was wearing it down, but I was too lazy to even really, stop and look. It was always all right. It's dark, time to get off the water. But I wore out the screw, like, I've rubbed all the plastic down and then sanded down the screw that was holding the keel guard in, and, yeah, so when I was down at Fork, it is when it kinda sprung the leak and started taking on water, and I
Oh
ended
my
up
god.
picking up an Outback, I was fortunately not too far from the shore, so I got back in and pumped all the water out and then went shopping in, what was it? I think it was Mariner's Landing? Duke down there, took care of me and got me in a Hobie, and that was 2021. So it's, I guess, relatively new to a pedal drive and a motor, but I feel like it's it's a different world when you can not have to fight the wind all day.
Yeah, it's totally different. Once you get a motor, game on. I can fit, you can do single access by yourself. You don't have to worry about the logistics and getting a ride from somebody or having another vehicle. That's why I love having a motor on the kayak, especially in the river. I mean, you can shoot upstream 3, 4, 5 miles and then fish back down to the truck.
I like it. I'm, uh, I'm excited. We were talking offline a little bit. Um, I've got a new kayak coming that I think is gonna be perfect for some of these rivers we have around here, and I'm anxious to spend some more time on them. But that motor is gonna be a key, and I've got a 180, the Newport 180, I guess the original one. What are you running up there?
Yep. So I started with a Torpedo 403. I broke the shaft, replaced it, used it for another year. Then I ended up getting the original 180, and it actually just broke down about 2 weeks ago.
Ooh,
So it just went completely crazy on me. Um, the controller was glitching out and everything. So that's in the warranty process right now, and I have somebody that's letting me use a 180 Pro at the moment.
okay. So same thing. I was curious because I
Yeah.
debated putting on a bigger motor. I see some of these guys with, I guess the Torpedo is the 1103 and the Newport's the 300,
300. Yeah.
but I don't know. If money were no object, that that was my biggest thing.
Yeah,
You ever
and that 300 is great. It's got a lot of power, but you also have to have a 36-volt battery, which on average is 10 pounds heavier than any 24-volt battery. And then the
Mhm.
motor is heavier too, so you're adding about 20 more pounds to your setup, jumping from the 180 to the 300
Gotcha.
roundabout.
And so yeah, and that weight is definitely it's another consideration. you know, I'm car topping my stuff and then rigging everything up, trying to be as light as possible and leave as much of my my stash of tackle in the car as possible. But but yeah, I've at least my thinking is lighter means I can go further and quicker. So that 20 pounds, you know, and the fact that I've already got a motor, and I don't have whatever it is, 1,200 bucks or 1,000
Yeah.
bucks for another one. And then not even counting the battery. Um, I decided to kind of stick with
No,
what I
that 180 is fine. Yeah, I've fished, I think, almost 2 years on that 180. It does everything great.
okay.
The
That
180
makes me feel
Pro
good
is
then.
a little bit faster. Yeah, yeah, it's fine.
Well, let's talk, I guess the colder weather a little bit. Because I see you in all these photos bundled up, chasing them when it's cold. Is there a big difference to chasing them? You know, like say summertime versus this early spring or late winter? You still there? I still got you, Ryan. Technology is not my friend. Uh-oh. You still
Yeah,
there?
yeah, I'm here.
Gotcha. Sorry. Did I freeze? You froze on my end. I can't tell.
Yeah, you get like your screen blacked out for about 5 seconds.
Okay. Well, hopefully we can power through here. Um, I was asking, I guess if there's a big difference in your mind between how you approach sort of these colder months versus the summertime. My experience is in the summer, but um, you got a lot more experience
Yeah,
than I do in the cold weather.
yeah, for sure. There's definitely a big difference. I mean, there's a few of us around here that fish all winter long, and I really like the winter time because number one, there's not a lot of people on the water. that's that's a big bonus. A lot of times you're fishing pretty much by yourself. You don't see anybody the whole time. Um, Also, when you do find the fish, they're more concentrated. Seems that when you do catch them in the wintertime, at least for me, they all seem to be bigger fish. We don't seem to catch a lot of small ones in the river in the wintertime. So I like fishing when the water's cold all through winter. It sucks to have to bundle up and all that, but the reward is definitely worth it for
Yeah,
sure.
I believe it. I see. Like my biggest smallmouth, I think was what I got a 21 and three quarter a couple of years ago, but I caught it in I think it was August, so it weighed 4, 4.5, something like that. But I know there's guys that, especially some of the places around me, these guys catch 5+ pound smallmouth out of the rivers, but it seems like it's always this time of year, the pre-spawn when they're really heavy.
Yeah.
That's been your experience too. The big ones are kind of now.
Most of the time, your biggest one will be pre-spawn in the year, or super late fall when they're really bulking up for the winter. But early spring is really good too. They got the egg weight and they're feeding up heavy because they're getting ready. They need all the food they can to get ready for the spawn. So some of the biggest ones that we do catch are in the spring, early April.
Okay.
Like right now
Now,
is right now when the river starts really heating up around here. The water almost 2 weeks ago, the water here hit and after like 10 days in the river. The fish
I
started moving. They started moving out of the winter areas. and it was starting to get good. And now the river temps back down to like 48, I think, today.
Ooh, so you're in Ohio, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so a little bit further north of me, I guess, but I imagine the water temps aren't too much different. I could be wrong. I've not been on the river yet this year, but I can't imagine we're too much above 50.
I would assume there's some weather pattern and everything, depending on where you're at in Virginia, but we're probably pretty close.
Okay. So, did you guys get some colder weather again that knocked the temps back, or
Yeah, we did. It got super warm here. It was 75 degrees for like 4 days in a row, and there was literally nobody out on the river at all. And then all of a sudden, when we got those 3, 4, 5 warm days, you would go down and it was just people everywhere. Everybody came
oh,
out of the woodwork, and people were catching big smallmouth everywhere. And then that I went a little bit earlier today for like 20, 30 minutes to look at the river, and there was nobody in sight again.
the cold put them all back inside? All the
It
fair weather
did.
fishermen
It
like
does.
me.
Yeah,
So, you mentioned
but
a
this
minute
is.
ago. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say this is probably your best time to catch your biggest one. You know, early April.
Okay. Now, you mentioned earlier that, you tend to find them grouped up this time of year. What what do you tend to look for? Is there a sort of a depth or a current speed or a type of structure or habitat that you're, you're starting with for this time of year?
Well, yeah, I mean, so the river that I fish isn't, it's definitely not a creek, but it's definitely not like the New River or the Susquehanna size. So it's just a medium sized river. I mean, might be 75 yards across in some spots, maybe only 50 in others. But so when the water gets up to about 50 degrees, which it is right now, and it holds there in winter, and a lot of them, like you were talking about earlier, we'll run up to the dam. That's an easy way to pick them off, but that's also where 10 other people are standing with the minnow bucket. So try to stay away from them areas, but they'll run out of these deeper areas where they're at in the winter, and they'll run to like riffles or deeper riffles a lot with a lot of bait that's congregated in them, and that's one place that I start looking for them.
Okay.
Um,
So they're
there's
just,
you go ahead.
no, sorry. The connection keeps cutting in and out, and I keep talking over you. I apologize.
I think we just got a little bit of a lag.
The, in your mind, is it just, they're setting up somewhere focused on feeding, kind of putting the calories on before the spawn?
Yeah, that's 100% what it is. They're gonna run to where they know they can eat the most food before they have to spawn. So that's gonna be those riffle areas with more current. That's where the bait fish are. They're not gonna be just hanging out in that deeper, slower water where they were in the wintertime. So that's why
Okay.
a lot of them run up to, if there's a dam a couple miles, a lot of them fish will swim all the way up to that dam. But in your sections where there's not a dam, that there's a lot of areas where you got 10, 15, 20 miles of river where there's no dam. They're going to look, I look, there's almost false dam that's going to be like a super shallow river that they probably won't swim past. So they will all stack up below that and just feed.
Interesting. Okay, that gives me some ideas then. So not necessarily, I guess like the same concept, just it's not an actual dam that they can't get up. Just the same concept. Some fast moving water, some current breaks they can get behind, and just let the current bring some
Exactly.
food. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I mean, I've heard Jeff talk about it too, but he has a theory. It's like, why would they swim past this riffle when it's 4 or 5 inches deep when they hang back above it? They, some people think they don't pass it. It's just, but
Gotcha. So as far as like baits and techniques, are you thinking cover water this time of year, power fish, or more like finesse, or both?
I like to do a little bit of both. So to become honest with you, like I would say 5 ago, that's all I like to do is finesse fish, spinning rod, uh, little bitty finesse swim bait or Ned rig, because that's what it's easy to catch smallmouth on those baits and they work. Everybody knows that. In the last couple years, though, I've really got into the power fishing and on the big swim baits, and that's kind of been of an addiction of mine in the last couple years. So that tends work really good in the spring too, because they're feeding heavy. So you can catch them on a 6, 7, 8 inch glide bait, a bull shad, stuff like that, and that's all too. So that's
Big, big stuff.
always have a big swim bait. Yeah, yeah,
Dude, that's fun. I've not done it much for smallmouth. I played around a little bit. Was it last year? Yeah. Uh, I think it was May, like maybe late May. I played around with a little, oh, what do you call it? It's the Sixth Sense one. I'm blanking on the name, but it's a cheapo one that you can do the modification to. It's like 25 bucks maybe. Like a bluegill profile. I think it's the
yeah.
flow. And I did catch some fish on it. I
Flow
caught some
glide.
nice fish on it.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the one. Um,
yeah,
but I felt like I missed a bunch, and there was some fairly clear water that I was fishing, and I'd be working that through these areas and see fish come up, and I could watch them hit it, and it's like they'd have it for a second, but those big hooks, these 12 to 14-inch fish just weren't hooking up on a bait that big. Are there any tricks? Is it just that's kinda how it is, and you're really weeding out those fish and targeting the bigger fish?
yeah. I think so. Size of the glide bait kind of does matter when it comes to hookup ratio, but smallmouth are crazy, and a lot of times when you're throwing a glide bait, they're not getting the actual bait in their mouth. A lot of times when you're hooking them, they might be getting the tail of it or just the head, or they might be slapping at it to try to stun, and you're hooking them on the outside of the body and stuff like that. So there is glide baits that are a little not as tall in profile, more slender, that some people
Okay.
like to throw. I like to stick with a 7 inch Chad or Metro Glide from Throwbacks. It's 7 inches, which does really good in the current, because I've also learned that all the glide baits aren't equal, especially when you're in a river. Some of them just don't swim good in the current at all.
Ah,
And I have 70 glide baits in my room in here that I went crazy buying, and
dude.
toying with some, and found out what works and what doesn't, at least for the current that we fish.
Now, I feel like I've seen
Um,
those throwback swim baits. Are those some of the ones or am I looking at the wrong bait?
You've probably seen this, so I know you've seen this.
Yeah, yeah, that pink
Can you see
lemonade
it?
color. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that bait is really skinny, which it allows it to cut through the current really good because it's a
Ah,
slender profile. And then we do a lot of stuff with putting extra weight on the baits. I used to wrap lead around the hook shanks on both shanks of the hooks because when you work a glide bait in the current, it wants to rise up. So if you weight the hooks, or we also take like lead tungsten strips, they'll stick onto the bottom of the glide bait, like a zap bait. Will help keep it down, in the strike zone when you're working it fast.
and
Because a lot of
and
the glide
that's
baits that you buy, they're like good.
I was gonna ask real quick about the tape. Is that like a an adhesive on there that makes it stick to the underside? Like a what were they called? The storm, those suspend dots?
Yeah, it's exactly like that. It's like them storm lead suspend dots, but they're tungsten, so they're a lot
Ah,
heavier, size comparison. So you can
okay.
take those like size, they'll stick them under the chin, maybe one in the back, depending on.
Hang on a sec, Ryan. I'm gonna try to pause the recording real quick. The I'm getting a lag on my end, like you're cutting in and out. I'm gonna try to see if we can get a better connection here. All right, so I got Ryan back. I think we got a better connection now. And we were talking about the glide baits in the spring, and you mentioned the profile on that particular one is thin, and that helps it to work right in the current.
Yeah, yeah. So, like I said, a lot of glide baits, they're all not built the same, and when you're fishing them in the current, you want it to stay down. A lot of them kind of work their way up to the surface. So that Metro Glide does have a thinner profile, and like I said, we like to add weight to either lead on the hooks or some of the sticky tungsten weights under the body. It helps keep it down into the strike zone, especially when you know, we throw them up into like heavy current and we'll burn them across the current, and smallmouth will just appear out of nowhere. It's kind of crazy.
Dude, it is amazing how well they camouflage. Uh,
Dude,
like how they blend in with the bottom.
yeah, it's nuts. Like we were on the Susky this it was in the fall time, but fishing the same way, and they would just come out of nowhere and just annihilate it when you'd be burning it like right through that current as fast as you could. It was insane.
Shoot. So you can actually catch them with those really fast, I guess fast retrieves when it's cold like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like when we were doing that, that was late fall, and I think the water was like 47 degrees.
Dude.
That's when they're I think they feed the most, when the water is 45 to 50 in the fall and, 50 degrees in the spring. They're there's one thing on their mind, and it's to eat. And you'd be surprised how fast they'll move.
Dude, in my head, it's like I always thought, 50 is like the magic number for me. I always thought if it's colder than that, like, oh, I gotta be dragging something on the bottom and they don't want to eat, and I gotta fish super slow, and I might get one or two bites today.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
I've been doing it wrong.
Well, that's kind of what I thought too. Reading the books and watching everybody 10 years ago, and that was the thing. And like, there was people throwing swim baits back then, but now that it's so popular, people are realizing that there's guys that throw swim baits all winter long.
Mm,
The super diehards, and I'm not gonna do that if it's December and it's 30 degrees out. You're probably catching me throw a jerk bait or a Ned rig.
okay.
Probably a jerk bait.
But once that water hits the mid to high 40s, you can trigger them with that glide.
Oh yeah, yeah. They come unglued for it. It's pretty sweet. Or like we throw like a lot of jointed swim baits, like a bull shad,
Okay. Just
or
burning it with that.
yeah, burning it around that current, around the deeper current seams, the deeper riffles.
Gotcha.
A lot of people
Yeah,
like that little 6 cents trace, the 6 inch. It's
I've
a
s
jointed. It's a jointed swim bait,
okay.
like 35 bucks or something.
It's in my price range.
Yeah, yeah, and it works.
Cool. I might have to try that one. So, I guess now I'm curious because color is the other thing that I feel like smallmouth are weird with, and I know you got that super loud, pink I think it's pink lemonade, the
Yeah.
chartreuse and the pink. Um, is that just a glide bait thing for you, that loud color, or is that something do you play around with those types of colors with other baits too?
I do like. I'll throw. I have a jerk bait. One of my favorite jerk baits that I throw in the dead middle of winter is black and chartreuse, and it's pretty much black and yellow. It's a mega bass jerk bait, and it has half the jerk bait is bright yellow, and they tear it up in crystal clear water in the winter when the river's 35 degrees. They
Dude,
tear it up.
I feel like that's the other misconception. Like in my mind, it was always, oh, we got to match the hatch and have something natural. And there's still plenty of times where I do that, but I'm starting to think smallmouth are just like a different thing.
You know, sometimes it's weird because sometimes I feel like, oh, color matters. And when I pick out these baits, I pick some that are supernatural. But then we go out and throw that pink and yellow swim bait and they annihilate it. Or I have a all pink glide bait, taxi shad, and they eat it. It's sometimes I think color doesn't even matter. It's just to catch the fisherman.
It's just something that they're gonna kill it, and it's they don't care what color it is, they're gonna eat it.
Yeah.
Dude, that's cool. Well, I guess along the same lines, you mentioned burning that glide bait. Uh, do you do you like to use a quicker retrieve with other baits too? Like, do you burn a spinner bait or a chatter bait or other like power fishing baits that time of year, or is it more of uh, a glide bait specific thing?
Well, I fish a spinnerbait too a lot, pretty fast in the spring. Yeah,
I
and then
remember that. Sorry, go ahead.
we throw chatterbaits a lot here too. When the river in the spring, man, we get rain and the river gets super dirty a lot here. We live in an area where there's a bunch of rivers converging, and we end up getting all the rain into one river, and we'll throw a black and blue chatterbait when it's super muddy. But
Okay, that was, I guess the Shenandoah. That was one of the things that I remember. I can't remember who wrote the article, but it was in Bassmaster years ago, and it was at that time I always thought inline spinners and really like dainty lures, the grubs with a single jig head in them. And I remember reading an article that was talking about musky fishermen catching smallmouth with some of the stuff that they throw,
yeah,
and then guys like figuring out, oh, we can throw these bigger things and still catch smallmouth. Like guys talking about throwing a big spook. like at that time, I was like, that doesn't. I mean, the smallmouth, he's small, a little mouth, but I saw the article, and that was kind of that river fishing below that dam was kind of my first time realizing I can catch a smallmouth on this bold white spinnerbait. Like that was a kind of eye opening for me. The throwing stuff that I just thought, well, no, those are largemouth lures. The
Yeah.
smallmouth, you got to throw these other things, but um, it's kind of like the glide baits are taking it like to a whole different level. It's like even more so than that. I mean, you'd think that it wouldn't be, or maybe I wouldn't be so dense that I would have learned from that all those years ago and and experimented with some different stuff. But
I used to think the same thing. Like when I got my first glide bait, I remember getting it, and I'm like, there is no way that one of these smallmouth is going to eat this thing. It's huge. And I remember going out and throwing it, and I probably threw it one day, didn't get any follows or anything. But I remember one day under a bridge, and I threw it under a bridge, and I was learning how to use the swim bait and walk it and everything. And this giant swim bait just came up out of nowhere and rose up and looked right at it and just disappeared. And it was like that moment, like I seen the power of what that could do, and it just blew my mind. And I'm like, all right, I got to catch something on this. And that was like a depths 175. So it's a pretty decent sized glide bait.
okay,
Yeah.
so you're it sounds like you're definitely hooked on the big baits for the smallmouth.
Oh yeah, I have too many of them.
Do you find that it does weed out some fish, or do you still catch more like your average, your non-trophy fish
I
with
mean,
that thing?
you will catch 12 and 14-inch smallmouth, but for the most part, you are catching 17, 18, 19, 20-inch fish on the bigger baits. I do have a lot of downsized glide baits too. Like at the Classic, they just released a 6-inch version of the Chad Shad. They just released it at the Bassmaster Classic. I bought a couple of them. It's perfect
Dude,
size.
I didn't even hear about that.
Yeah, I mean, this little guy, this thing is like, it's like bite size now. So,
Ooh, that is nice.
yeah, so Kevin from KGB Swim Baits, he was telling me, he said it's basically identical to the 7. He just downsized everything.
Hmm.
I took it out last night just to see how it swims, and it's freaking sweet.
And that's like a standard color. That's not a custom painted deal.
They had it at the expo, so I'm not sure if
Gotcha. It
they said, yeah.
might be a special. Well, shoot, I tried the Chad Shad. I think I was throwing it probably on a rod that was a little bit too light. I think it's right around 3 ounces, and the rod is basically right around the max for that rod. So I wasn't able to cast it particularly well. And yeah, I didn't have it for very long before a muskie took it.
Oh,
So it was I mean, I don't have a bunch of experience with the muskie yet, but that was the biggest one I've ever seen. And yeah, it was, I mean, I know there's a lot more expensive baits. $60 is not bad in the world of swim baits, but that was hard to watch that thing swim away with my glide bait.
yeah, that
But I
hurts.
that 5, I think I or the 6, like that looks it's noticeably smaller. Uh I think my gear will throw that a lot better than the 7-inch
Yeah,
without
and
and
I kind of do things a little different too when it comes to like the gear and stuff. Uh, since I'm on the kayak, I throw like a 7.4 rod. I don't
Mm.
have like a big 7'9" or 7'11" because it's so big to have on the kayak. So I like a shorter rod, and also the rod that I use is probably a little underpowered, but when you're in the river, you're not making, long bomb casts. So it works out, and I use a 200 size reel, 200 Corrado or 200 Scorpion.
Okay.
Yeah.
That huh. That's got the gears turning a little bit. I do something similar with other techniques. Like I like a flipping rod that's a little bit shorter, still kind of beefy, but for swim baits, I never even thought to try something that's a little shorter. I can't remember what the length on mine is. I think it's 7/8. So it's and it doesn't have a gigantic handle, but it's I don't know. It's definitely for some of these little skinny places in the rivers. I could see where I wouldn't mind having something a little shorter that's not, sticking up and out, and it's a
Yeah.
little easier to make those roll casts maybe.
And that, I don't know what it is about them big long handles, but I don't like them. I just feel like they're in the way, and it's just
So
so.
7.4, and is it a heavy action still or a medium, like
Yeah.
medium heavy?
So what I was using pretty much all last year was a 7.4 Poison Adrena heavy, and I think it was rated. I think it was rated up to 2 ounces. I forget the exact rating on it, but it's not. It's called like the Big Bait Moving Bait Rod. It was the old Poison Adrena lineup. They made it again in the new lineup, but it throws
Okay.
all them 6, 7 inch baits great.
And are they all around, like, topping out around 3 ounces, the stuff that you're throwing mostly?
Yeah, two,
Okay.
2.5.
Okay.
I mean, this
That
little,
makes sense.
this new little one that I just bought, you could throw that on a medium heavy bass rod.
Okay. I
Yeah.
gotta get my hands on one of those. Do you know if they're actually out or if it's just "Hey, look what's coming soon"?
So they sold out at the classic, but he was just talking online and said that they're going to start making a bunch of these. So they'll probably be dropping some more in a couple weeks, a month.
Dude, I might have to pick one of those up. That and what was the you said it and I've already forgotten it. The Sixth Sense, was it the Trace?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That's a good little budget jointed swim bait.
Okay.
Get
And
the
I've got
got to get the fast sink one though.
the Fast Sync.
Yes.
Okay.
If you
Because of the
get
current.
Yeah, if you get any of even the slow sink, it goes straight up to the top of the water.
Okay. And then you just basically using it like a wake bait.
Yeah.
Okay. So weight them. Okay. I've got I think I've got that herring profile one that in the bull shad. It's still jointed. It doesn't weigh quite as much. It reminds me a little bit the profile. It reminds me a little bit of the profile on the Chad shad you just showed off. Um, but I've not thrown it a bunch, and I know it's not the fast sync version, so I might have to figure out a way to add some weight to it.
Yeah, that bait that you're talking about that's a really good profile for smallmouth.
Okay. All right, I'm feeling good about that. Um, shoot, I had a question and now I've already gone and forgotten it. Oh, I know what it was. We were talking about fun stuff, like the big swim baits. I throw a topwater a ton in the summertime, like a plopper, a chopo. I feel like it's no secret. I mean, the guys, it I don't know, it's you sling it out there and you reel it back in. You can stop it and start it. It's kind of hard to screw it up.
Yeah.
Um, but do you do any of that stuff this time of year, or is it mostly subsurface?
So there's a good topwater bite in the spring, and then it'll last all summer. And I feel like the best topwater bite is in the fall here, 100%. You can throw a
Okay.
big topwater and you're going to catch a big one. We used to have a we used to have a really good spring topwater bite here. One of my buddies was throwing a full size crawler last spring, and he caught a giant. Those 20 incher, it was like 5 pounds on a giant crawler, and the water was nothing like 50, 55 degrees.
And the crawler, is it like a, is it the heading one? The one with the little feet and it wobbles across the surface?
Yeah, this was a Ray Deca Dodge. It's big, but yeah, it
Hmm.
has the metal wings and it
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
crawls on the surface. This thing is so, I wouldn't even have thrown it. It's so big.
Huh. I'd be afraid for smallmouth. I remember throwing it. It was the jackal version, the pompadour maybe. I
Yeah,
got the big one, and then they made a smaller one, and I don't even know if it's still around. But I threw the smaller one, and I was finding for largemouth too, I was finding they were coming up and hitting it, but they were missing the hooks. It's a weird body on that thing. It's
yeah,
cool looking watching that thing, like, do the little,
yeah,
like, almost like a crab or something, like,
yeah.
rolling across the
Well,
surface.
that's like that pompadour, the pompadour that you had, the full size one.
Mhm.
That crawler that Dylan caught that fish on is bigger than that. It's crazy.
Nuh-uh. And
Yeah,
that smallmouth got enough of the hooks.
yeah. He hooked it.
I remember looking at that thing, trying to think what do they think it is when they eat it? And part of me is like, do they think it's a bird or like some, I guess, some land critter that's landed in the water?
Yeah, or
I
they must think it's a baby bird or something.
it That's crazy to me that they would, I could see a largemouth, you know, big mouth, I could see them. I don't know, I guess it makes more sense to me that they would attack, rats or whatever else, ducks and stuff that, little baby ducks.
Yeah,
But the smallmouth, I never considered smallmouth coming up and like trying to take down a muskrat or a duck or something.
they're mean. They're mean fish, man. They, especially in the river, I feel like they're just savage. They'll eat anything they can.
Dude. Well, I I'm looking at the time. I I appreciate you sticking around so long and working through some of the technical stuff. Hopefully the audio is okay on that earlier part. It's been great the last like 15 minutes or so. Um, but I wanted to, I guess, throw out kind of one last question and then give you the floor. But I'm curious, like one piece of advice for somebody that's like maybe in my shoes or they've never chased a smallmouth this time of year. Like, what's the one kind of one tip, something they should take away?
I mean, I guess I would say don't be afraid to throw something big when the water's cold because they're a lot more active than we think when the water's 45 degrees. So don't let that fool you because you can throw a 6, 7, 8 inch bait and they will annihilate it when the water's 45 degrees. 100%.
Dude, you got me amped up. I can't wait to get that kayak tomorrow, get it rigged, and get out on one of these rivers and chase these smallmouth.
Yeah.
Um, but I want to give you the floor for a minute. You can talk about whatever you want. If you want to plug a sponsor or tell people where they can find you on socials, the floor is yours, Ryan.
Okay, well, I guess I'd say you can follow me at Ryan Doll 82 on Instagram. I don't have a YouTube, and I guess I kind of wanted to talk about the Smalley games that's coming out. So that's through Chegan. It's a smallmouth game that all of us smallmouth anglers play. It's like a board game. You can check them out at Chegan.com. Um, it's really cool, man. It gets everybody involved, and you kind of compete against yourself. You get these cool stickers. Actually, there's a board game behind me from a couple years,
Ah, I see
but
it.
a lot of us do it in Indiana and Ohio, and there's a bunch of guys in Virginia that are playing, um, and they're all New River fishermen too. So they played last year, but they just did a live as we were recording this, so I kind of missed what they were talking about. But if you go on achigan.com and click Smalley Games 2025, find out more information about that.
Yeah, dude, I'm gonna have to check that out. I saw some stuff posted. Is it like where you have like a task, like you've got a almost like a bingo card where you've got to fill it up with all the spots?
Yeah, I mean, so they do something different every year, and they're really creative, and it's fun. So you got to catch fish, and then you can complete each piece on the game by catching these fish, different sizes. You obviously, the bigger the fish, the farther you get to make it. And then they have little challenges along the way. We do stuff cleaning up the river, picking up trash, catching fish on different baits. It kind of forces you to fish more than you normally would, or do stuff differently, which is it's kind of fun. It's cool.
Awesome.
Really had fun doing it the last couple of years.
Well, thanks for sharing it, dude. And again, thanks for making time. And yeah, you've got me all excited to get out there on the river and chase some smallmouth a little earlier this year.
Good. I hope you get out there on a new kayak and blast them.
Yeah, I'll you'll be able to see it. I'll post some pictures all over Instagram if I do run into one. But Ryan, thanks again. Ryan Dahl, ladies and gentlemen. That was fun. Ryan is a really, really good smallmouth angler, and yeah, it's crazy. He's talking about these big baits, and I guess it's funny now, kind of looking back at these articles from 15 years ago or 20 years ago or whatever it was now, and seeing these guys talking about big baits at the time. And it's crazy to see where we've gone with and how aggressive these fish are. Um, I am anxious to give some of that stuff a try. But we got a couple of segments to get to here. All right, so we ran a little bit long um, with some of those technical difficulties, so I'm going to keep our final segments kind of short. Um, yeah, I'll spare everybody, and let's do Kings of the Week. I'm going to do it really short. I'm just going to say everybody that I named earlier that put up 100 inches at the Lake Fork tournament, they're all the kings and queens of the week. That is awesome to me. That is a huge accomplishment to catch 100 inches anywhere, but to do it during a championship event, really, really special. So congrats to everybody that pulled that off. You guys are all our kings and queens of the week. And the final segment we'll do, I'll keep it pretty short too. And I may have mentioned this tip before, but yakking on a budget, our yakking on a budget tip this week. I saw a picture of me the other day. Well, one of the pictures that I took, selfie with me with a fish, and that was kind of funny. I had my face all wrapped up. I had the neck gaiter pulled up. I had the gloves on, and the tip is just going to be sun care. Protect yourself from the sun. What I like to do is use clothing rather than I don't like sunblock. I don't like the runny, sticky, or having to spray it on. I just don't like messing with it. So pretty much regardless of the time of year, um, a rainstorm's about the only time where I'm not going to have all that stuff on. But I am going to have uh, gloves. I'm either going to have wool fingerless gloves when it's cold, or I'm going to have lightweight sun gloves when it is hot out. Keep that skin protected. On my hands, I'm going to have long sleeves. I like wearing hooded shirts. Um, I can pull the hood up over my hat, and I have a bunch of neck gaiters. I've also got a bunch of clothes. I know Hook made one. I don't know if they still make it. I've got a couple of these Hook shirts that have a built-in neck gaiter. I think maybe NRS or Sims. I feel like there's some other companies out there, but to me, that is the technical apparel is not necessarily the cheapest thing, but it is way cheaper than medical bills, having to deal with skin cancer and melanomas. Um, I do not want to have to deal with that stuff. So if you're like me and you spend a lot of time out in the sun, regardless of the time of year, just remember to keep that skin covered. Either lather on the sunscreen if that's your thing, and if not, just make sure you've got protective clothing to keep those harmful rays from messing you up and sending you to the doctor. And that is our yakking on a budget tip for this week. And that is also going to do it for this edition of Kayak Fishing Weekly. Thanks to everybody that tuned in and stuck around to the end. We'll have another episode coming to you next week. And until then, remember to take a kid fishing.